EVO. Winter is the oldest storyteller we have. Not because it speaks, winter doesn't speak, but because it repeats itself with a kind of patience that eventually feels like intent. It teaches through recurrence, through patterns, through the steady insistence that the world isn't here to protect you. And every 4 years, we build something that looks like a rebuttal. We take the most hostile season on Earth and we dress it in ceremony. We hang flags like charms. We light cauldrons like we're summoning warmth by tradition alone. And we send young people down mountains at speeds their ancestors would have called suicidal. And we call it beauty. We call it excellence. We call it the Olympics. And the world loves it because the Olympics, especially the Winter Olympics, lets us believe in a lie that feels good to say, that courage is stronger than physics. But winter's never been impressed by courage. Winter respects only laws, gravity, momentum, friction, the indifferent arithmetic of ice. In Innsbruck, 1964, 2 men die before the opening ceremony begins. And if that sounds impossible, if your mind tries to reject it, good. That's the point. The modern mind is trained to believe tragedy is the exception. Winter insists that tragedy is a cost. A British loser, a 17-year-old downhill skier. 2 bodies handed back to the world before the world had even started clapping. And later, in Albertville, a different kind of winter arrives. The winter of modernity, machinery, scheduling, systems. The belief that we have engineered risk right out of the mountains. Until a snow grooming vehicle becomes the last thing a man ever sees. Tonight, we're not telling these stories for shock. We're telling them because the Winter Olympics, which I love, they're not just a sporting event. They're a ritual performed on the edge of nature's patience. And the devil within isn't the cold. The devil within is the part of us that keeps saying, it won't happen this time. And a few minutes from now, we're going to arrive at the moment that the Olympics stop feeling like celebration and starts feeling like a bargain. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to part 1 of the Winter Olympics, the Games of Ice. This is chapter 1, Innsbruck, the city that learned winter's name. In Innsbruck, Austria, winter's not a season. It's a sovereign. It arrives early and stays late, settling in the Tyrolean valley like a monarch claiming the land by right of old blood. The mountains rise on all sides, dark, disciplined, unsentimental, while the city below breathes quietly under a cover of snow. In the morning, the roofs look powdered. In the evening, the streetlights cast a gold that feels almost holy. And in the middle of it all, every 4 years, or so it seems to the people who live here, humanity announces its intention to prove something. This is what the Winter Olympics are at their core. An announcement. We're here, the announcement says. We have mastered cold. We have mastered speed. We have mastered the physics that once killed our ancestors in silence. But Innsbruck doesn't respond to announcements. Innsbruck is older than announcements. Innsbruck's older than confidence. And in 1964, the city hosts the Winter Games with the careful pride of a place that has always understood ceremony. Flags are raised, venues are cleared, tracks are carved and polished. The world arrives wearing coats that look expensive and optimism that looks invincible. Officials speak in clean sentences. Broadcasters practice their reverent tone. Athletes, those young creatures of hunger and belief, stare at the mountains and feel something like destiny licking at their heels. But winter knows a secret that athletes only learn when they're forced to. The mountain isn't impressed. In the quiet hours before the opening ceremony, when the cameras aren't yet hungry and the crowds haven't yet been taught how to clap on cue, the games are already happening. They begin in training runs, in practice heats, in those private moments when an athlete tries to convince their body it can tolerate the next tiny increment of speed. Two men arrive to Innsbruck as if stepping into a dream. One is a British luger, K. Skrzpecki, with the composed air of someone who has already lived through danger in another form. He'd been a pilot, meaning he had already trusted his life to machinery, already understood that the difference between control and catastrophe is sometimes as thin as a breath. Now, luge is new to the Olympics then, exotic and thrilling, a sport that looks almost elegant until you realize the truth. It's falling with intention, and intention can't soften steel. The other is a boy, really. Ross Milne, 17 years old, Australian, a downhill skier who has traveled unimaginably far to stand at the edge of European winter and say, in effect, I belong here too. At 17, ambition feels like fate. You don't yet know the ways fate can turn in its sleep. There is a particular cruelty in winter sport that the Olympic posters never capture. The mountain doesn't have to attack you to end you. It only has to exist. It only has to be itself. A slope, a bend, a tree placed in the wrong relationship to speed. Winter doesn't have to be dramatic. Winter's efficient. And so before the games can officially begin, before the first medals can turn into headlines, Innsbruck begins collecting what it will later be accused of stealing. Skrzpecki crashes in a luge training run. A line breaks. A body becomes vulnerable. He's rushed to the hospital, to surgery, to the urgent choreography of professionals trying to outpace what winter has already decided. He dies. It happens quickly enough that the mind, that shallow, optimistic organ, tries to insist it isn't real. A death before the games, a death in rehearsal, a death when the world hasn't even started paying attention. And then, as if winter's making a point, it happens again. Ross Milne is training downhill. The skis want to fly, the body wants to trust. The mountain offers speed like a seduction. And then something slips, an edge, a moment, a fraction of a degree that becomes an eternity. He hits a tree and dies of his injuries. 2 deaths before the opening ceremony. If you're listening closely, you could already hear the first note of the haunting. Because tragedy isn't just a loss. Tragedy's context. Tragedy is the moment we discover the shape of the world is not the shape we expected. Now the Olympics continue, of course. They must. The machine can't pause long enough to mourn properly. The officials issue statements. The city tightens its jaw. The games begin as if the dead are merely an unfortunate preface. But Innsbruck has learned winter's name again. It's been reminded of what it already knew. The mountains aren't scenery. And somewhere in the cold air of 1964, the devil within takes his first quiet breath, not as evil, but as certainty. The belief that because we're organized, we're safe. The belief that because we're exceptional, that we'll be protected. But Innsbruck whispers back, no one's protected. And winter, faithful as gravity, waits for the next chapter. Chapter 2, Albertville, when the machine entered the mountain. If Innsbruck was the old world, romantic, mid-century, still cloaked in the illusion that sport was noble and therefore safe, then Albertville in 1992 is the new world, the broadcast world, the sponsorship world, the world where every surface is sanded smooth so the camera can glide across it. By 1992, the Winter Olympics have learned how to look like inevitability. They have become a global product with a ton of religion, practice reverence, unified spectacle, the promise that excellence is something we can buy tickets to. Albertville itself is small, French, alpine, beautiful in the way mountains always are, beauty that feels almost hostile because it makes you forget that it can kill you. But the Olympics doesn't simply arrive in Albertville. It installs itself. It builds, it expands, it turns the region into an engineered myth. And this is where the horror shifts. Because winter is dangerous on its own, yes, but winter combined with machinery becomes something else entirely. A system. And systems are the greatest invention and the most dangerous delusion humanity has ever created. Because systems teach us to trust what should never be trusted completely. A snowcat, it's not a monster. It's a machine designed to groom the slope, smoothing the world into something the athletes can more safely conquer. It's the symbol of modern control, the idea that now even snow can be organized, even cold can be managed, even chaos can be prepared like a stage. But a machine doesn't understand glory. A machine only understands its function. And in Albertville, on a day that should have been ordinary in the quiet way that warm-up days are always ordinary, Nicholas Bochete goes out to do what athletes do: loosen the body, wake up the muscles, find the edge where the adrenaline starts. He collides with a snow grooming vehicle and dies. The first time you hear that, it doesn't sound like the Olympics. It sounds like some awful accident in a backcountry workplace. A tragedy between a human and a machine, the kind of death you never expect to see next to 5-ring logos and national anthems. And that's why it lands with such cold force, because it reveals the truth that the Olympics try so hard to mask. Beneath spectacle is logistics. Beneath heroism, there's scheduling. Beneath dreams are forklifts and snowcats and radios and schedules and timing. When something goes wrong in a system, there's always a scramble, not just to respond, but to narrate. Because the Olympics is not simply a sporting event. It's a story, it's a narrative, and stories require coherence, even when reality doesn't. So the details of Bochete's death begin to fracture. This is always what happens when the dead are famous enough to demand explanation, but not quite famous enough to control it. Was there a siren? Were there warning lights on? Was the snowcat even visible? Was it moving uphill? Was it stationary behind a ridge? Each question becomes a splinter under the skin of certainty. Each question irritates the official version. And the deeper horror is this: even if every warning system was functioning, even if the driver did every single thing right, even if the skier made one fatal miscalculation, the outcome remains the same. A life ended not by sport, but by infrastructure. Albertville teaches us that the Olympics can kill not only with speed, but with the choreography of the event itself. It can kill with the very tools designed to make winter manageable. Which means the games are now haunted in a completely new way. In Innsbruck, the haunting belonged to nature, to trees, to gravity, to the blunt truth of the mountains. In Albertville, the haunting belongs to modernity. It belongs to the belief that safety protocols are equivalent to safety. It belongs to the faith that because a schedule exists, reality is going to follow it. And if you want the devil within, the real devil within, it's here. The moment you realize the danger isn't just in the athlete's risk-taking. It's embedded in the structure, in the event, in the machine. A death like Bochete's doesn't merely sadden. It unsettles. It suggests that even in the world's most controlled environment, chaos can slip in like cold air under a door. Albertville becomes another city with an invisible wound. Because places remember. Because mountains remember. And a snowcat, an ordinary piece of equipment, becomes, in the mythology of winter, a silent reaper. This is how hauntings are born in the modern world, not from ghosts and castles, but from the realization that systems can fail. And when they do, the dead aren't merely symbolic, they're real. And somewhere in the polished shine of the 1992 games, winter smiles, not cruelly and not gleefully, simply knowingly, because winter doesn't need to hunt. Winter only needs us to step into its domain, believing that we have it conquered. Chapter 3, The Shadow Rings, When Celebration Builds a Grave. The Winter Olympics are brilliant at one thing: making you forget the cost. They'll show you the victory, they'll give you the tears, the flags, the slow motion embrace. They'll place a medal against a human chest as if gold has the power to cancel mortality. But the games never linger on the moment when the body is carried away. In the real world, after Innsbruck, after Albertville, the athletes keep arriving. They have to. The Olympic dream is a river. It keeps running even when bodies fall into it. And yet, the dead aren't removed from the story. They're just added to it. The haunting is cumulative. It becomes a quiet pressure in the architecture of the Winter Games, like a seam of ice beneath fresh snow. The public doesn't always see it, but the people inside the machine feel it. Officials learn how to speak in careful language. They learn how to acknowledge tragedy without letting it affect the brand. The Olympic story has to remain luminous, has to remain aspirational. But the winter doesn't care about aspiration. Winter's the great editor. It strikes out the unnecessary. It reduces you to breath and blood. And what the Winter Olympics reveal, whether they intend to or not, is that the human condition is always most visible in extremes. That when people are pushed into speed and danger, their psychology begins to glow like coal. Why do they keep doing it? That's the question an outsider asks. The insider knows the answer, because the games aren't really about sport. They're about meaning. An athlete trains for years for a moment that lasts minutes, sometimes seconds. Sometimes in luge, less than a minute. A life condensed into a run down a track. They do it because we have, as a species, always needed rituals to prove we are more than our vulnerabilities. We have always needed a spectacle to reassure ourselves. See, we can defy the world. And the Olympics sells this defiance as a product. But there's a problem with defiance. Defiance assumes an opponent who can be beaten. And winter cannot be beaten. Winter can only be endured. So the Olympics becomes, in a strange way, a romance between humanity and an indifferent force. And like all romances with indifference, it ends in heartbreak more often than the posters suggest. Which brings us to the anchor idea of episode 1, because every story needs its bone. The devil within isn't a creature crouched in snowdrifts. The devil within is certainty. It's the confidence that a human plan is stronger than a mountain. It's the belief that because something is, prestigious, that it must be safe. It's the conviction that a system is reliable because it's official. Innsbruck and Albertville are the slow tightening of the noose. Innsbruck says, winter kills even before you begin. Albertville says, the machine you trust can actually end you. And what comes next, what we're building toward, is the moment when the modern Olympics meets winter's indifference in the most unforgiving way possible. In real time, on camera, broadcast to a world that thought it was just watching sport. Because the Olympics are not just a ritual of excellence, they're a ritual of risk. And risk, sooner or later, collects payment. In part 2, we enter Vancouver in 2010, where the track becomes faster than faith, where a young man becomes a national tragedy before the opening ceremony begins, and where the question isn't simply how someone died, but why the infrastructure allowed it. And then we widen the lens, away from the stadiums, into the haunted logic of host cities. Because the Olympics don't arrive in empty places. They arrive in towns with history, with grief, with folklore, with the kind of old darkness that's not paranormal, but human. Poverty, isolation, war scars, disappearances. And when tragedy happens in such a place, it doesn't evaporate. It settles. It becomes part of the landscape. A track becomes a shrine. A slope becomes a warning. A city becomes a ghost, smiling politely at tourists while keeping secrets under its snow. That's the true horror of the Winter Olympics. Not that someone dies, but that the world keeps celebrating in the same place afterward, as if the ground beneath the podium isn't layered with the dead. And maybe that's why we can't look away. Because the games are the purest metaphor for the human condition. We keep running, even as winter waits, even as time waits, even as mortality sharpens its blade. As T.S. Eliot would tell you, the modern life is often a festival built on denial. and winter's always there to remind us. Denial doesn't stop the cold. It only makes the cold feel more personal when it finally arrives. So T.S. Eliot wrote about time like it wasn't a straight line, but a room that you can, walk back into. A place where what happened before never really leaves. And that's what winter does. It turns places into memory. Innsbruck is still Innsbruck, still beautiful, still bright in photographs. But somewhere in that valley, if you listen with the right kind of attention, there's still an echo. The reminder that 2 lives ended before the games even began. Albertville is still alpine, still lovely, still capable of convincing tourists that the mountains exist for leisure. But the machine, quiet, ordinary, designed to smooth the world, proved something terrifying. That the Olympics can kill not only with sport, but with the systems built to contain sport. And this is what these stories are at the deepest level. Not a catalog of disasters, but a warning about the human condition. We build rituals to deny fragility. We build ceremonies to make risk feel noble. We build infrastructure, and we call it control. But winter's not a collaborator. Winter is the original editor. It crosses out arrogance, and it underlines the truth. And the truth is simple. We can be extraordinary and still be vulnerable. We can be prepared and still be taken. We can do everything right and still lose to the cold math of the world. Next time, we go to Vancouver, where the Olympics doesn't just break a heart, it breaks in public. As a mea culpa, I'm sure that I butchered those names. I apologize. Did the best I could. Make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating and review. It helps more people discover the show. If you have any ideas or thoughts or comments, you can email me at info@evocreative.com. I'd love to hear from you. The Devil Within is an EVO production recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your writer and host, Brandon Morgan.